Hello and welcome to Professor Pincushion. I'm Tova and today I'm going to show you how to draft your own petticoat pattern. This pattern is based on the half circle skirt and it fits perfectly under the full circle skirt. Not only that, but it's based on your own measurements. If you have your tape measure, let's go ahead and grab some measurements and get started on drafting. Here are the supplies I'm going to be using for drafting my petticoat pattern. So I have pattern paper. You need pretty large sheets of paper, tracing paper, a yardstick, some tape just to tape everything down. You need your flexible tape measure to get measurements, paper scissors, a pencil with an eraser, and a sewing gauge. You only need two measurements. You need your waist measurement and the length measurement. Now the waist measurement is going to be a circumference around your natural waistline. So you're going to use your flexible tape measure to take this. To this measurement, you're going to add 1 inch. I'm going to be using my own measurements just as an example. So if, for example, my natural waistline is 26 inches, I'm going to add 1 inch to make it 27 inches, just to add a little bit extra for ease. The length is going to be however long you want your skirt to be. So you're going to measure from your natural waistline down to wherever length that you want your skirt to end at. Take some of your pattern paper and you're going to want to tape it down. Now because most of these skirts are going to be quite large, you want a large sheet. Just to make sure you're going to have enough, you're going to take your length measurement and add about 5 or more inches to it. So it's going to be bigger this way and this way than the length of your skirt. Now I'm just going to create the foundation lines first. So you can see that's my green lines first. You're going to do this in pencil. I went ahead and did it in a marker so it would be easier for you to see what I'm doing. So the very first line I'm going to draw is this A to B line. This is just a straight line. The length of this measurement doesn't even matter, because it's not based on any of our measurements. Just draw a really long line. And I'm going to do the same thing from A to D. Again, this is just a really long line here. Then I'm going to finish off D to C, and I usually make this line the same length as whatever A and B is. So again, these measurements, there's no measurement to it, just draw really long lines. Measure point A to point D. So if I measure from here to here, let's just say it's 20 inches. I'm then going to start from D, measure on this line 20 inches, and I'm going to go ahead and make a mark. Then I'm going to connect this mark that I make with point A. You should have something that looks like this now. So now I have this diagonal line from point A, and now this point down here is point E. So now that we have our foundation set up, we can start drafting. We're going to plot the waist first, so you're going to need your waist measurement. So again, I'll just use my numbers. 26 inches plus 1 inch for ease means I'm going to have 27 inches for my waist measurement. I'm going to multiply this number by 1/3. So if you're doing this as a calculator, it would be your number, so 27 times 0.333. And then you'll end up with your number we're going to be using for the next part. So I'm going to be using 9. On each of these lines, you're going to do that same measurement. So from A, I'm going to measure over 9 inches. From A to E, measure 9 inches. And on this line, measure 9 inches. And then you're going to go ahead and mark them F, G, and H. Draw a smooth curve between points F, G, and H. Now, if you need help filling this in, you can make your own compass by grabbing some string, tying a pencil at the end of that string, and putting the end without the pencil at point A, and the pencil side goes here. Now you need to make sure that the length of the string is the same length as points A to points F. So for me it would be 9 inches. So the end of the string here, the pencil here, and then you just swoop it around and that should give you a pretty good curve. Now I'm going to go ahead and make this a dashed line because this may not be a permanent line. We need to measure it first. Use your flexible tape measure to measure along this curve. Now this curve is going to be half the length of your full waist measurement. So if I were to take 27 inches, which is my waist measurement with ease, that should be 13.5. So I'm measuring this, and I've actually already measured it. So from here to here along this curve, it was 14.25. So it's a little bit bigger than what I need it to be. So from this point, it's a little bit of a guessing game, but this line should be close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these points, H, G, and F, and I'm going to just move it up. I'm just going to say a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to draw a new line, and then I'm going to draw another smooth curve, measure it again until I get really close to my 13.5. I drew a new waistline here and made these points now F, G, and H. So now we can discard this line here if you want to erase it. Next, we're going to plot the length of the skirt. So I went ahead and wrote down the measurement that I'm going to be using. Now this is not taking a hem allowance into account. It's just whatever you want the finished length of the skirt to be. You're going to take the length measurement for your skirt and we're going to start plotting it. So on the A and B line, you're going to start from point F. I'm going to measure 16 inches, make a mark that's going to be point I. From G, I'm going to start here, measure 16 inches, point J, and then from H, measure down 16 inches, and that's point K. Now you'll notice K is below D. That happens sometimes. If you don't have enough room, you can go ahead and tape another piece of paper down below here just to extend your length. Then, just like we did with our waistline, you're going to draw a smooth curve from points I, J, and K, and that's going to be our hemline. This is what your pattern should look like right now. So we have our waistline, side seam, and then we have the hemline. We're now going to draft the stitching line for our facing for our petticoat. So to do that, from the hemline, you're going to measure up 11.5 inches and then you're going to draw another curved dashed line. Here's that facing stitching line that I just had you create. Now don't worry if you have a larger gap between your waistline and your stitching line. I just made my skirt a lot smaller in order for the whole thing to be covered on camera. So chances are if you're doing a large skirt, this is going to be a larger gap between these two lines. At this point, you can now go ahead and add all your seam allowance to your pattern. So I'm going to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance to my side seams, to the waistline, and also to the hemline here. Now the reason why I'm doing a seam allowance and not doing a typical hem allowance is because the facing piece is going to be stitched to this part, so you can go ahead and just make that a regular seam allowance. Because it is such a drastic curve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, but then make this seam allowance to only be 1/4 inch. The red dashed line is my seam allowance line. So if I was to cut along this line, then that's going to be my pattern. You can see I added notches. You can add notches or marks wherever you wish and when you want to match things up. I have a notch down here for matching up my petticoat hemline with my facing piece. I have a double notch over here on the side seam. It's 9 inches from point H. This is going to be a marker for putting in my zipper here on the side seam. And then I have another single notch up here. I just did it 8 inches down. I went ahead and added my grain line and my information for my pattern. So this is the petticoat and I need to cut 2 of these pieces. Don't forget when you cut everything out, you're definitely going to also want to transfer your stitching line. Another good idea is to measure your hem line. So that's I to K, so the green line. And you want to measure that length and then double it, and that's going to tell you how much lace you're going to need to add if you want to go ahead and add lace to it. Next, we're going to draw our facing piece, and we're going to base this on our petticoat pattern that we already have. So I just grabbed some tracing paper, lay it on top, tape everything down, and I'm going to draw all my red lines from the hemline up to the stitching line. So basically, I'm just going to start here. In my case, it's going to be the red line. And I'm going to draw from this point here, the red hem allowance or seam allowance line, and then up here and stop at the stitching line. The top of the facing pattern is going to follow along the same stitching line curve, but it's actually going to be 1/2 inch above it. So I'm just going to measure this whole stitching line up 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to make little points the whole way. And then from here, I'm going to follow along those curves till I get to this point. Creating your pattern piece for your facing is actually quite easy because it's just the bottom portion of your skirt. It's pretty much all the same, except I have this extra 1/2 inch up here at the top, so you can see my red line here. That's because we need that extra seam allowance for putting in the facing. But the grain line's the same, the notches are the same, so it makes it really easy. So I have petticoat facing, and of this, I'm going to cut 2 in crinoline. Cut both of your pieces on the red dashed line, and then you have your pattern pieces you need in order to create your petticoat. Our book, Professor Pincushion's Beginner Guide to Sewing, Garment Making for Nervous Newbies, is now available to order. Go to professorpincushion.com/books or click on the link in the description to see a list of vendors where you can purchase it.